following me for the last little bit knows that I just got off the heels of a humongous Touhou retrospective. So if you haven't checked that out and you have any interest whatsoever, go ahead and do so. But regardless, most likely if you clicked on this video, you already know about Touhou, because these are my top 10 Touhou games. Now, some ground rules right here. I am not a hardcore player. I still play on easy and occasionally normal mode, so when it comes to scoring methods and some of the advanced level play, I just don't care. I'm looking at just how straight up fun the game is, in my opinion. So, my opinion is not going to be the same as many of the higher level players out there, so keep that in mind. But regardless, let's get into it. These are my favorite Touhou games, starting with number 10. Hopeless Masquerade is probably one of the oddest and more unique fighters I've seen, especially in the independent crowd. You see, you can actually essentially jump downwards because you're flying in the air, and that leads to a whole new level of evasion possibilities because of it. It doesn't change the formula of a 2D fighter so much that's alien, but that new dimension makes it very different to play, if that makes any sense. Adding great graphics for an independent title, and pretty good sound, and you have a game that's really up there. The only reason it's not higher on my personal list is the character selection, to me, leaves a bit to be desired. I prefer the classic Touhous as opposed to the more recent ones. But regardless, it's hard to hate on this game if your computer is advanced enough to run it. Of the PC-98 titles, none was more refined than Mystic Square. It has the most features: 4 characters, same number of stages, refined bullet patterns, and overall it just ran well on the PC-98, and for better or worse, it's a full-fledged Touhou game as far as gameplay is concerned. So there's really little else you could want out of the archaic hardware that they were working with. Sure, it's not going to hold a candle to some of the more prestigious Touhou games, but given what you had to work with, if you want to play a Touhou game on the PC-98, this is the one to do. Embodiment of Scarlet Devil essentially was the jumping on point for most people in the Touhou franchise. That being said, it lacks a lot of the refinements that were put into some of the later games, and suffers pretty bad for that. Despite being a nostalgic choice for most in the series and having some of the most memorable characters the franchise has ever seen, the gameplay just isn't as refined as many others, so it kinda suffers on this list at number 8. Still, it's a very playable, very enjoyable Touhou gaming. One of the more difficult ones. The only fan-made Touhou game on the list, Megamori, is my champion for that genre just because of its well-done gameplay, its blisteringly hard difficulty level, and its overall competency. It's one of those games that will grind you into the ground, but you'll keep coming back for more. It's the very definition of Nintendo hard, even though it's not actually on a Nintendo. It's actually far harder than any of the actual Mega Man games, and that's saying something. Regardless, Megamori is worth looking into if you like the Blue Bomber L, or if you have a mild interest in difficult punishing games. At number 6 is 10 Desires. Now, this is one of the more recent ones to hit the list, and, well, it's definitely a lot better than some of the ones that came before it. Duly noted that UFO, Undefined Fantastic Object, just missed the list for certain reasons. The main reason that 10 Desires gets on is because the trance mechanic is really cool. You can activate it to keep yourself from dying, or after you die to try to blitzkrieg whatever enemies are left over. It's one of the more useful gimmicks put into the Touhou franchise, and it's pretty fun to use. That and add in the kind of ghostly theme that they have going on, and it's probably one of the more interesting titles in the franchise. Of course, 10 Desires would be improved upon by its direct sequel, Double Dealing Character. This one actually is very enjoyable in my opinion, and probably the best Zooms put out in a long time. The idea behind this one is that you can choose between two very different configurations for your character, one with misfiring weapon and one weaponless. Couple that with razor-home gameplay, really fun and sometimes even trippy boss battles, and some of the best music the franchise has had in a long time. And overall, you have possibly one of the largest high points in the franchise. And this is only at number 5. I can't wait to see what Zune does next if he keeps up with stuff like this. Number 4 is Scarlet Weather Rhapsody. Easily more refined than the previous fighter in material and missing power, with its extremely large roster of Touhou characters and loads of gameplay possibilities and unique weather system, Scarlet Weather Rhapsody is probably the best Touhou fighter you're gonna ever get your hands on. The fact that it uses all the classic Touhous makes everything better. Honestly, if you're looking for a fighter to play, this would probably be it, especially if you're looking for a PC one. Number 3 is Perfect Cherry Blossom, and yes, I know that's a lot of people's favorite game in the franchise. Not only because it was the one that they started with, but because the supernatural border system adds a lot of depth to the gameplay. Basically, it gives you a one-time use shield or a bomb that you can use to defend yourself with. Couple in some really memorable stages, bosses, and music, and you have definitely a high point in the franchise. And one that only 2 games could beat out, in my opinion. Still, I'm sure a lot of people will debate me to death over this one, so if you love Perfect Cherry Blossom, it's a great game. It deserves to be number 1. In most people's minds. Not mine, however. What got number 2? Let's take a look. Call it odd personal preference, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but I really enjoyed the Great Fairy Wars. There was something about the mechanics of the game that just made me fall in love with it. I love the freeze mechanic behind it. I love the fact that life has changed the motivation. I like how bombs work in this game. I just like how this game is made. I don't know how else to put it besides that. It's just really enjoyable in my case. Sure, it's not perfect. It gets kind of repetitive because there's only really 4 stages in the entire game. They just have different shot patterns and whatnot, but I don't know, I just really like this game, and it's hard to articulate why. Honestly, most people don't consider it one of the better Touhou games. I don't know, I fell in love with it. Let's move on. And in a move that surprised absolutely no one that watched the Touhou Retrospective, my #1 Touhou game is Imperishable Night. The dual character system just adds so much to the game, in my opinion. Just being able to use the human or the yokai. The time system is really interesting, and it basically rewards experimentation with the characters. And I don't know, it's just a joy to run through. The music is amazing. Certainly the bosses aren't one of the more memorable set in the entire franchise, but the shot patterns are fun. I can't articulate how much I love this game. Sure, it was my first Touhou game, and maybe there's some nostalgia behind this, but it took enough risks to feel different from the rest of the Touhou games without any of those risks falling apart or coming back to bite the game. And honestly, I can't think of a better thing for the series to, a better place for the series to appear. I hope they bring back the dual character system in some other game, because I would really like to see that with some of the more modern cast and see what they could do with that. Well, those are my top 10 Touhou games. If you don't like them, leave a comment. If you do like them, leave a comment. Just leave a comment and subscribe. You know you wanna. Do. Thanks for watching.